Prabhuji, we finished till like Prabhupada was unwell, and
This one.
yes, Prabhuji, we stopped like like they were doing Sankirtana like night also, all those things we have finished till then.
You know where exactly we stopped?
Yeah, there was like end of that one session, Prabhuji, in that one, in that place. Yeah.
We should start from the sentence, a statement called before Prabhupada's illness, the
Yes,
devotees had
yes,
planned big
yes,
event in
yes,
Tompkins,
yes,
Japan.
yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Sorry, say the line again.
Before
Before-
Prabhupada,
Carry on, Mataji.
yeah, before Prabhupada's illness, the devotees had planned a big event in Tompkins Square Park.
For Sunday, June 4th.
This one?
Yeah, the first time.
Yeah.
Prabhupada's illness, yes. Yes.
Okay, any volunteers to read?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I can read, if you like.
Okay, good.
Shall I start?
Yes, Machi.
Before Prabhupada's illness, the devotees had planned a big event in Tompkins Square Park for Sunday, June 4th. The parks department had given them the use of a loudspeaker system and the stage in the band shell. Mr. Kalman, producer of the Hare Krishna record, had encouraged them to advertise and had gotten in touch with the TV stations. The devotees had begun making Hare Krishna mantra signs so that everyone, even the TV viewer, could chant. Although now unable to go, Srila Prabhupada said they should still have their festival. He would compose a special address for Kirtananda to read to the public. From his hospital bed, he dictated the short speech, an address to American youth by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. On June 4th, several hundred people gathered around the band shell in Tompkins Square Park while the devotees played harmonium, kartals, and mridangas and chanted Hare Krishna over the PA system. Many people in the crowd chanted along, playing their own instruments and even joining the devotees on stage. Kirtananda stood before the microphone and announced that Bhaktivedanta Swami, although ill at Beth Israel Hospital, had prepared a message for everyone. Many among the Lower East Side crowd were acquainted with Bhaktivedanta Swami and his chanting of Hare Krishna. They listened as Kirtananda read, "My dear young beautiful boys and girls of America, I have come to your country with great hope and a great mission. My spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj asked me to preach this cult of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Western world. That was a seed-giving incident. Gradually, the seed fructified, and I was prepared to come to the Western world. Still, I do not know why I was so much attracted by the land of America. But from within, Krishna dictated that instead of going to Europe, I should better go to America. So you can see that I have come to your country under order of superior authority. And even after arriving here, when I perceived that some of the youngsters are being misled, confused, and frustrated, this is not the condition of your country only, but in every country, the young people are neglected, although it is they who are the flower and future hope of everyone. So I thought to myself that if I go to the American youth with my message and they join with me in this movement, then it will spread all over the world, and then all the problems of the world will be solved. How I would like to be with you in person today, but Krishna has prevented that. So please pardon me and accept my blessings in this written form. This process of Sankirtan, this singing and dancing, is so nice because from the very beginning, it places everyone on the spiritual platform. There are different platforms or levels to our existence: the bodily platform, the mental platform, the intellectual platform, and the spiritual platform. When you stand on the spiritual platform, then all the problems created by the necessities of the body, mind, intellect, and ego become solved. Therefore, I appeal to you to join this movement most seriously. The process is very simple. We ask everyone to come join with us in chanting, hearing something of the philosophy of life taught by Lord Krishna. Take a little prasadam, foodstuff that is prepared and offered to the Lord, and peacefully, with refreshed mind, go home. That is our mission. We do have certain restrictions. Practically, they are not restrictions, but something better in place of something inferior. The other day, Mr. Allenberg questioned me on his TV program, on his television program. Swamiji, why do you insist on marriage? And I answered him, unless one becomes peaceful in home life, how can he make any advance in any other area of life or knowledge? Therefore, everyone should get married, just to be happy and peaceful. You are all beautiful, nice, educated boys and girls. Why shouldn't you get married and live happily? If you live peacefully, regulated lives, eating nothing but Krishna Prasadam, then the tissues in your brain will develop for spiritual consciousness and understanding. However, if you're not agreeable to these simple restrictions, still I request you to join the chanting with us. Everybody can do that, and that will gradually clarify everything, and all problems will be solved. And you will find a new chapter of your life. Just this week, I have received a letter from a girl in New Jersey who has had such an experience. She writes, Dear Swamiji, you don't know me by name, but I am the girl who joined your parade in Washington Square this past Saturday. When I first saw your group, I thought you were all crazy, either that or on dope of some kind. After listening and talking with some of you, I realized that it was neither of those. You people plainly believed in what you were doing, and I admired you for that much. But my curiosity drove me further, and I had to find out why. So I followed you, and as I did, the chant you sang began to take hold. The next thing I knew, I felt free of myself, and I was singing too. I didn't know where I was or where I was going, but I was too elated to care. It wasn't until we stopped that I learned where I was. By that time, I had picked up bits and pieces of what Krishna consciousness was about. One of your members asked me to visit your temple, and I followed you still further, hoping to discover just what it was that made you feel so strong about something I had never heard of. After having taken a meal with you and reading your literature, I left, but not alone. I took with me a new awareness of life. It occurred to me how futile my desires for the material things in life were, that a new dress or a big house or color television were not important. If only people would open their eyes to the endless number of pleasures God has already given us, there would be no need for looking any further. You people are truly lucky. You may have had to do without many things, but because of this, you are able to enjoy the simple God-given treasures of the world. Because of your beliefs, you are the wealthy, and I thank you for sharing a bit of that wealth with me. So we invite you to please chant with us. It is such a nice thing. Come to our temple if you like, take a little prasadam and be happy. It is not very difficult if you just chant this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That will save you. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Srila Prabhupada was.
Amati, can you just stop there? Can you just stop there? Okay. A few things that I wanted to speak about. First, we see here how Prabhupada explains that from within, Krishna dictated that instead of going to Europe, I should better go to America. So this is the nature of a pure devotee of the Lord. That whatever they do is dictated by Krishna. Once Prabhupada, I don't know if it comes in the Leelamrita, but this is something which is documented, that Prabhupada was asked by a reporter, how do you run the Krishna consciousness movement? And Prabhupada replied that Krishna tells me how to do it. So then I think it was Rameshwar Prabhu. who is with him at that point, he tries to clarify that Krishna, we perform activities through our intelligence, and so if the intelligence is purified, and some kind of a long answer. And Prabhupada cut him off and said, no, Krishna tells me directly how to run this movement. So this is the position of the eternal associates of the Lord. They get dictations directly from Krishna. As Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavatam, that this is the transcendental television. So they're always in touch with Krishna and transcendental television in the heart, Prabhupada says. So then Krishna directly relays information, messages, and instructions to the pure devotees. So that's something which we need to take note of. And a few other things is that Prabhupada, he makes it very nicely explains in this letter. He says, the process is very simple. We ask everyone to come join with us in chanting, hear something of the philosophy of life taught by Lord Krishna, take a little prasadam that's prepared and offered to the Lord, and peacefully, with refreshed mind, go home. This is our mission. We do have certain restrictions. Practically, they're not restrictions, but something better in place of something inferior. So, Prabhupada here brings out the essence of Krishna consciousness. The essence of Krishna consciousness, it's a very simple process. We just have to practice Krishna, just have to chant Hare Krishna. And whatever we do, we just need to do it as an offering to the Lord. So the problem, however, is that we try to pursue material desires, and which are contrary to Krishna consciousness. And then in the process, we become hopelessly entangled. And then we begin to wonder whether Krishna consciousness is actually very simple or simple. Actually, it is very simple. Or whether it is easy, or whether it is, we get into all these kind of dilemmas when we, all that happens due to the pursuit of material desires. But if one practices Krishna consciousness with the faith that by the practice of Krishna consciousness, one can be fully happy, peaceful, satisfied, then that will happen. So that is what we would experience. So Prabhupada keeps it very simple. He says that why should we get married and live happily? We live peacefully, regulated lives, eating nothing but Krishna prasadam. The tissues in your brain will develop for spiritual consciousness and understanding. And also, I just noticed that in the letter that Prabhupada quotes from this lady, from this young girl who writes to him, who joined his parade in Washington Square the previous Saturday. And she actually very nicely brings out the fact that if only people would open their eyes to the endless number of pleasures God has already given us, there will be no need for looking any further. She precisely understood what Prabhupada was trying to teach. That is, if only people would open their eyes, the endless number of pleasures that God has already given us, there will be no need for looking any further. So Prabhupada calls this the artificial necessities of life. Why would someone want to look towards the artificial necessities of life if we can open our eyes to the endless number of pleasures God has already given us? Okay, let's go ahead. Adi, let's go ahead.
Yes, Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada was eager to leave the hospital. For several days, he had wanted to go. They are simply sticking needles, he complained, and each day was putting his society into further debt. The devotees had rented a small seaside house in Long Branch, New Jersey, where Prabhupada could go to recuperate. Kirtananda, they decided, would be Prabhupada's cook, and Gaurasundar and his wife, Govinda Dasi, were arriving from San Francisco to do the housekeeping and help. But the doctor wanted Prabhupada to stay for another brainwave test and more observation. One day, while Brahmananda and Gargamuni were visiting Prabhupada, the doctor entered and announced that the Swami would have to go downstairs for an X-ray. No needle? Prabhupada asked. Yes, doctor replied. It's all right. When the nurse brought in a bed on wheels, Prabhupada said he wanted Gargamuni to push it. He then sat on it, cross-legged, and put his hand in his bead bag, and Gargamuni, following the nurse, wheeled him out of the door, down the hall, and onto the elevator. They went down to the 3rd floor and entered a room. The nurse left them alone. Gargamuni could sense Prabhupada's uneasiness. He was also nervous. It was such an unlikely place for him to be with his spiritual master. Then a different nurse entered with a needle. Time to give the Swami a little injection. No, Prabhupada shook his head. I'm sorry, Gargamuni said flatly. We're not going to do it. The nurse was exasperated but smiled. It won't hurt. Take me back, Prabhupada ordered Gargamuni. When the nurse insisted, Gargamuni acted rashly, his usual tendency, and stepped between the nurse and Srila Prabhupada. I'm ready to fight if I have to, Gargamuni thought. I won't let you do it, he said, and wheeled the bed out of the room, leaving the nurse behind. Gargamuni was lost. He was somewhere on the 3rd or 4th floor, faced with corridors and doors. And Prabhupada's room was on the 6th floor. Unsure where he was going, Gargamuni wheeled through the corridors with Prabhupada sitting cross-legged, chanting on his beads. Brahmananda arrived at the X-ray lab seconds after Gargamuni's escape. The nurse and an intern complained to him about what had happened. Brahmananda, they considered this a theft. Swamiji was their property. As long as he was in the hospital, he was theirs to do whatever they pleased with. Gargamuni had stolen Swamiji away from them. Gargamuni got to the elevator. He had difficulty maneuvering the bed and in his haste bumped onto the wall. He forgot what floor Swamiji was on. He only knew that he was protecting Swamiji, who wanted to be taken away. When Gargamuni finally reached Prabhupada's room 607, an intern was there and spoke angrily. I don't care, Gargamuni said. He doesn't want any more needles or tests. We want to leave. Brahmananda arrived, calmed his younger brother, and helped Prabhupada back into bed. Prabhupada said he wanted to leave. When the doctor came in, Prabhupada sat up and spoke decisively. Doctor, I'm all right. I can go. And he shook the doctor's hand to show him he was hale and hearty. The doctor chuckled. He said that although Swamiji was getting stronger, he would have to stay a few more days. He was by no means out of danger yet. He required careful medical surveillance. They needed to run another electroencephalogram. Srila Prabhupada still had pains around his heart, but he told the doctor his boys had a place for him to rest by the seaside. This was very good, the doctor said, but he couldn't let his patient go just yet. But Prabhupada had made up his mind. Brahmananda and Gargamuni arranged for a rented car. They gathered Prabhupada's things and helped him dress. As they escorted him out of his room and the hospital staff saw that the boys were actually taking the old man away, some of the doctors and nurses tried to stop them. Brahmananda told them not to worry. Swamiji was very dear to them and they would take good care of him. He would get regular massages and plenty of rest, and they would get him whatever medicines the doctors prescribed. After a rest by the seaside, he could come back for a checkup. Brahmananda. Then the doctors became fed up. They threatened us. This man is going to die. They really scared us. They said, this man is going to die and it is going to be your fault. Even if we left, they said, this man is condemned to death. It was horrible.
Can I just stop there for a minute, Paul? A couple of things. One is that what a sight it must have been. Usually people lie down on a stretcher. Prabhupada sitting cross-legged with chanting on his beads on the stretcher and walking around different floors. I mean, he being wheeled around on different floors and finally reaching his room. But one thing that we notice is Gargamuni Prabhu's spontaneous willingness to do what Prabhupada wanted him to do, over and above considerations like they were in a hospital with qualified medical experts and things like that. This particular incident which Brahmananda Prabhu speaks about how this man is going to die and it's going to be your fault. So in the year 2014, I met Brahmananda Prabhu in Vrindavan. This is just a few months before he left this world. So he happened to recollect this particular incident of them wheeling Prabhupada, taking Prabhupada out of the hospital. And when he explained this story, he said they were really scared that something may happen to Prabhupada. But they had faith that this is what Prabhupada wanted to do, so we should simply do it for him. But they were really afraid of what would happen to Prabhupada. Like, for example, here he says it very clearly, that this really scared us. And he says it is horrible. Okay, Mataji, please go ahead.
At 10 a.m. on June 8, they left the hospital. Prabhupada wanted to stop briefly at the temple at 26 2nd Avenue before going to the house on Long Branch. Entering the storefront, walking shakily, he came before the portraits of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and his spiritual master's father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. For the first time, Prabhupada's disciples saw him offer fully prostrated obeisances. As he prostrated himself before his Guru Maharaj, his disciples also paid obeisances and felt their devotion increase. When Prabhupada arrived at his cottage in Long Branch at 1 o'clock, he had Kirtanananda immediately begin cooking lunch. It would be Prabhupada's first regular hot meal, rice, dal, chapatis, sabji, since his stroke 9 days ago. Prabhupada went to bed, but soon got up and came into the kitchen asking, "Is it ready?" Kirtananda made a few excuses and said he would hurry. After a few minutes, Prabhupada returned. He seemed furious. "Why are you taking so long?" Kirtananda moved as quickly as he could, but he couldn't make the dal boil any faster. "Whatever you have," Prabhupada said, "let me eat it. I don't care if it is raw." Kirtananda served lunch and Prabhupada ate with the relish of a person in good health. Kirtananda telephoned his pal Haigriva in San Francisco. He ate like anything. It was wonderful to see. The small one-story cottage was situated in a quiet suburb, a short walk from the beach. The backyard was enclosed by trees and shrubs, and the neighborhood bloomed with fragrant roses. But the weather was often blustery and the sky grey. Prabhupada spoke of returning to India to recuperate. In Delhi, Sri Krishna Pandit had refused Prabhupada's urgent request for Ayurvedic medicine. "You are in such a long place. If the medicine gives some bad reaction, then how to arrange for the good?" Prabhupada had written back asking if an Ayurvedic physician could be sent to America, but the proposal seemed impractical. It would be better for Prabhupada to go to India. He received Swaminarayan Maharaja's reply that since no Ayurvedic doctor would go to America, Swamiji should come and be treated in Calcutta. Narayan Maharaj also enclosed a letter to Prabhupada's secretary, Rai Rama. "There is no need for anxiety. Always utter Harinam, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare," near his ears. God will do for the best. Srila Prabhupada talked of going to India not only for his health. He told Kirtananda and Gaurasundar he wanted to start in Vrindavan an American house, a place where his American disciples could learn Vedic culture to help them preach all over the world. He also said he wanted to make some of his disciples, Kirtananda, Brahmananda, Haigriva, into sannyasis, and he would do that also in India. His real work, however, was in America, if he could just regain his health. But where was the sunshine? Govinda Dasi had cherished the desire to serve Swamiji personally ever since she had first met him in San Francisco. She saw that he was selfless and his love for his disciples was unlike anything she had ever known before. She didn't mention her cherished desire to anyone, even to Gaurasundar. But now Krishna was fulfilling her desire by allowing her and Gaurasundar to come to New Jersey to serve Swamiji. To the devotees in New York, having a married couple take care of Swamiji seemed the best arrangement, and Govinda Dasi and Gaurasundar had been available. These were external reasons, but Govinda Dasi understood that Krishna was fulfilling her desire. Serving Swamiji, Govinda Dasi felt completely satisfied. Now that she was actually dedicating herself to Swamiji as she had always wanted, nothing else was on her mind. Despite the problems of working with Kirtanananda, who seemed to think she was less intelligent because she was a woman and who sometimes corrected her, she was happy. Govindadasi. Swamiji would sit on a little couch with a table before him, and Gaurasundar and Kirtananda and I would sit on the floor, and we would all eat together like a family. We would talk, and one time the subject was rice. Kirtananda said, white rice is for human beings, and brown rice is for animals. So I said, I must be an animal then, because I really like brown rice better. And Swamiji just laughed and laughed and laughed. He thought it was so funny. I guess it did sound pretty simple, but he laughed and laughed. Prabhupada was sitting in the backyard when Govindadasi saw a large slug climbing on a wall. She showed it to Prabhupada. Chant to the poor thing, he said, and she began to chant Hare Krishna. Govindadasi would take walks daily and, with the neighbor's permission, pick dozens of roses. On returning, she would arrange them in vases and place them all around in Prabhupada's room. One time, when Prabhupada heard her loudly singing Hare Krishna as she returned from the neighborhood, he remarked to Gaurasundar, she is very simple-hearted. Govindadasi, Swamiji talked about Krishna in such a way that Krishna was present in the room. This was so striking to me. He would talk about Krishna's activities, about how Krishna is doing this and that, and how Krishna is so wonderful. And Mother Yashoda is thinking like this. He would talk and he would get into such a beautiful state that the whole room would glow golden. I would feel as if I were being transported to some other realm. And it was all very new to me. I didn't have any great understanding of what was going on, but it was all very new to me. And it was an actual transcendental experience of feeling Krishna's presence and almost glimpsing within the heart the memory of his pastimes. Swamiji playing kartals, Swamiji walking on the beach, Swamiji sitting in his room or taking a nap. Everything he did seemed wonderful to Govindadasi, and everything he did or said seemed to endear him more and more to her.
Mataji, can you just stop there for a short while? Okay. I wanted to say something. Just give me a second. Okay, this point that I wanted to just speak on was that Satsvarabhara makes the point here that she saw that he was selfless and his love for his disciples was unlike anything she had ever known before. I mean, this is a very distinct characteristic of Srila Prabhupada, that he simply loved his disciples. Of course, during those days, there were only disciples, but now we have grand disciples and maybe even great-grand disciples. Yeah, we have great-grand disciples also. So this is something which is an eternal fact, which is that Prabhupada actually the love that Prabhupada has for his disciples and his followers is unlike anything that one can experience in this material world. And this is what actually attracted Prabhupada disciples to follow him, because people can talk about love, people can give lectures about love, people can do whatever they want. They can try to speak about love, do all kinds of things, but to actually live that life of love, to demonstrate that love, that Prabhupada could do it, and he did it every single time with all his disciples. What to speak of disciples? Even here you see that Govindadasi is talking about, shows that slug to Prabhupada on the wall, and he said, chant to the poor thing. So Prabhupada's love was just all encompassing, not just to his disciples, but all of humanity. That's why he even went to America, because he never had disciples at that point in time. He went to America to just give out Krishna consciousness out of love. This is the essence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, that God, when he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, God is someone whom we generally understand to have no anxiety, right? But God, in his form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is full of anxiety. His anxiety is that how shall all the conditioned souls in this world be delivered? And all his followers have that as their main task, how to relieve the anxiety of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So our entire parampara is filled with great personalities who have been trying to do that. And so in the process of doing that, they have manifested the glory of love, how much they actually see everyone as parts and parcels of Krishna, and how they genuinely love. So if the pure devotees were not there, how would we even understand or experience what really love is? So they actually transmitted that experience of love. And that was the most attractive feature of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Mataji, please go ahead.
Devotees would travel no more than 2 at a time and only once a week from Manhattan to Long Branch to visit Swamiji. Mostly they would see him sitting on his bed, but sometimes they would walk with him on the beach. The morning sunshine, he said, would help him, but the grey skies persisted. As Prabhupada sat one morning with Kirtanananda, Gaurasundar, Satswarup, Govindadasi, and Jadurani on a blanket spread on the sand, he noticed some boys with surfboards trying to ride the waves. They think this is bliss, playing in the water, he said. Actually, there is some bliss there, but it is not Ananda, the bliss of the spiritual world. On Krishna Loka, everything is conscious. The water is conscious, the land is conscious, and everything is blissful. Here, that is not so. Devotees looked with him at the surfers bobbing in the sea. Yes, Kirtananda said. And also, here it is dangerous. At any moment, one of the surfboards could jump up and hit them on the head. Yes, Srila Prabhupada said, that is not real Ananda. Prahlad Maharaj has said that this material world is crushing him like a grinding wheel of repeated birth and death. He says that in material life, he experiences either separation from what is beloved to him or meeting up with an obstacle he doesn't want. And in order to combat this condition, the remedy he takes is even worse than the disease. LSD is like that, a remedy worse than the disease. Except that Prabhupada's face looked thin. His appearance was the same as before his illness. He sat among them, wrapped in a grey wool chadar. They knew he must be very careful about how much he did. They would never forget, as they had forgotten before, that he was 72 years old. Perhaps never again would they be able to enjoy spending as much time with him as before. Certainly, for now, his intimate association had become a rare treasure. Sitting inches away from Prabhupada on the beach blanket, Satswarup asked a question on behalf of the devotees in New York. Swamiji, is wearing of leather shoes permissible? No. What if someone has given us some leather shoes? Leather means violence, Prabhupada said. He pointed to Satswarup's shoes of inexpensive man-made material. Your country is very nice. By your technology, you can get these shoes easily without wearing leather. For Satswarup and the others, the question was answered for a lifetime, and the time and place became a reference like a chapter and verse number in the scriptures. As Jadurani helped Govindadasi gather flowers, the two girls talked together. Both had heard the men say that women were less intelligent and they felt discouraged. Later, Govindadasi told Prabhupada about the problem. Is it true, she asked, that because we are women, we won't make advancement as quickly as the brahmacharis? Yes, Prabhupada answered. If you think of yourselves as women, how will you make any advancement? You must see yourself as a spirit soul, eternally servant of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada gave Yaturani a photograph of himself to paint from, taken in India before he had come to America. Taken in India before he had come to America, it showed him grave and standing very straight against a blank white wall. Oh, Swamiji, Yadurani remarked, you look so unhappy here. No, he said thoughtfully, stretching out the sound of the word. No, that is not unhappy. That was a moment of ecstasy. Prabhupada drew Yadurani's attention to a picture on his wall. Mother Yashoda was rebuking her son Krishna for stealing butter, while in the distance, two of Krishna's friends were hiding behind a tree laughing. Prabhupada asked, do you think that Krishna would let himself get caught and his friends get away? She looked at the picture again. By the light of Swamiji's words, she could see that Krishna's friends would also soon be caught. She suddenly felt she was there in Vrindavan. They both laughed. After staying with Prabhupada,
Can you just stop there? Can you just stop there for a minute? Yeah. This one point which I forgot to mention earlier. That Govinda Dasi, she mentions about her experience of how Srila Prabhupada speaks Krishna Leela, and then she gets completely transported to a different world. She even speaks of a golden glow. So I remember once Jananivas Prabhu, he explained to me that when he would visit Prabhupada in his room in Mayapur, he would always look forward to the occasions where Prabhupada would be speaking about Krishna consciousness, about Krishna Leela. So, and specifically he wanted to hear Krishna Leela from Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would do that very often. And he said that was a very different experience. You get completely transported to the spiritual world. And he used a similar expression that there was a glow in the room when Prabhupada would speak about Krishna Leela. It directly takes you and puts you in the pastimes of Krishna. Yes, Mataji, please go ahead. I mean, so because this instance came up, I just remember. This is what I wanted. One of the points which I wanted to say earlier, which I forgot, about Govinda Dasi's recollection of pastimes with Prabhupada. Okay, Mataji. So she suddenly felt she was there in Vrindavan. They both laughed. So this reminded me that I forgot to say that. Well, please go ahead, Mataji.
after staying with Prabhupada for 2 days, Satswarup and Yadurani, the devotees visiting from New York, had to return to their duties. Although Prabhupada had been resting, he awoke just as they were about to depart, so they came into his room. In a faint voice, Prabhupada spoke a few words from his bed. Then he sat up and Gaurasundar began to massage him. People who think God is dead are crazy, Prabhupada said. Although no one had introduced the subject for Prabhupada, preaching about Krishna was always apropos. His voice picked up volume as he denounced the atheists. Just like if I go to the doctor, if he checks my heart and it is beating well, and if he checks my blood pressure and it is going on and my breathing is there, and after observing all these symptoms of life, if I ask him, so, doctor, what is the condition? The doctor says, my dear sir, you are dead. Is this not a crazy diagnosis? Gaurasundar, still massaging, glanced wide-eyed at the others. Prabhupada was now speaking in a loud, forceful voice, as if addressing a large audience instead of a few visitors in his sick room. Similarly, just see the signs of life in this universe. The sun is rising just on time. The planets are all moving in their orbits. There are so many signs of life, and the universe is God's body. And yet they are seeing all these symptoms and declaring God is dead. Is it not foolishness? They are rascals. I challenge them, simply rascals. A few soft words had become half an hour of strong, emphatic speech meant to move the audience against all kinds of atheistic theories. Although Kirtananda had at first cautioned Swamiji, reminding him about his health, Swamiji had dismissed the caution by saying, that's all right. But now he was exhausted and had to lie back down. The devotees had just seen Swamiji immediately use up whatever energy he had gained from his afternoon's rest. Although they admired how he was using everything for Krishna, they were also fearful. But they were helpless to restrain him. They were even implicated. They wanted to hear him. When Satswarup and Yadurani returned to New York, Brahmananda had them tell the others about Swamiji. Satswarup told how he had slept in the room with Swamiji and had felt that this nearness to Swamiji was very auspicious. He had felt light and peaceful and close to Krishna at all night. Satswarup and Yadurani told about sitting on the beach with Swamiji and is talking about everything being conscious in Krishna Loka, and told how Swamiji had sat up in bed and had used his energy preaching, showing them that they should also use everything in the service of Krishna. Brahmananda beamed at the other devotees. Just look, while you're talking about Swamiji, everyone is feeling blissful. Prabhupada stayed in Long Branch for 3 weeks, but when Sri Krishna Pandit wrote saying that he couldn't arrange for an Ayurvedic doctor to come to America, Prabhupada began to think more seriously about going back to India. In India, he could get sunshine and Ayurvedic treatment, but his plans would vary from one day to another. San Francisco, Montreal, India, New York. He told Kirtananda to inform the devotees in San Francisco that if they held a Rath Yatra festival, he would come. At the end of June, he returned to 26 2nd Avenue and to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor was surprised at Swamiji's recovery and had no objection to his flying to San Francisco. So, in search of sunny skies and eager to guide his followers in performing the first Rath Yatra, Prabhupada had airline tickets booked for himself and Kirtananda to Paris. Sorry. Prabhupada had airline tickets. I think
I
we
not
finished.
well. I mean, someone else can read if you.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for reading this long. This is the last sentence in this chapter.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for the service.
So, in search of sunny skies and eager to guide his followers in performing the first Rath Yatra, Prabhupada had airline tickets booked for himself and Kirtananda to San Francisco, New Jagannath Puri. Okay, any thoughts, reflections, questions on this chapter? We have 16 participants today. Okay, so we'll move on to the next chapter, Swamiji's departure. That's departure from New York to San Francisco. Anyone else would like to read?
Shall I read, Prabhu?
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Swamiji's departure. At the San Francisco airport, Prabhupada smiled but said little as the devotees greeted him with flowers and kirtana. It was different this time. He walked straight ahead with the aid of a cane. Jayananda was waiting with his station wagon to drive Prabhupada to the private house they had rented north of the city, a Stinson Beach. But first, Prabhupada said he wanted to visit the San Francisco Radha Krishna temple. Jayananda drove to 518 Frederick Street. Prabhupada got out of the car and entered the small storefront, which was filled with waiting devotees and guests. He bowed before the smiling Jagannatha deities and without speaking a word left the room, returned to the car and departed for Stinson Beach. The ride up through the seaside cliffs was so winding and climbing that Prabhupada became nauseated. And even lying down in the back seat and having Jayananda drive slower didn't help much. Kirtanananda realized that it would be too difficult for Prabhupada to visit the San Francisco temple from Stinson Beach. But maybe that would be just as well. He could spend all of his time recuperating. It was a modern single-story six-room house with a Japanese roof. A sign out front read Paradisio. Srila Prabhupada noticed in the front yard, amidst fashionable lawn furniture, a statue of Lord Buddha, a garden ornament. When Prabhupada entered the house, he found Mukunda and his wife Janaki waiting for him. They bowed down and Janaki wept in happiness. Prabhupada smiled but kept walking slowly and silently through the house. The large living room overlooking the Pacific Ocean was decorated with some of Jadurani's paintings of Lord Vishnu, Radha and Krishna, and Lord Chaitanya, as well as with Indian prints of Jagannath Puri. Prabhupada's bedroom, also facing the ocean, had sliding windows. On the wall was a portrait of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and a painting of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada smiled and said the paintings were very nice. The devotees agreed that only Kirtanananda and Upendra would stay and serve Swamiji. They wanted Swamiji's stay to be peaceful, so that his health could improve. That night, Srila Prabhupada felt pain in his heart and couldn't sleep. And he didn't rise early for translating. At 5 a.m., Kirtanananda came in and opened the window slightly so that Prabhupada could receive the soft ocean breeze. Prabhupada sat up in his bed, chanting his japa and gazing at the feet of Lord Krishna and Srimati Radharani. A mountain range to the east blocked the morning sun. Ever since Prabhupada's stroke, Kirtanananda had been regularly massaging Prabhupada morning and evening. Kirtanananda would rub Prabhupada's head vigorously and then sit behind him and massage his back. Next, he would massage Prabhupada's chest, his arms, and his legs, and complete massage lasting sometimes more than an hour. Since leaving the hospital, Prabhupada had also been taking daily morning walks, even while on the Lower East Side. And this morning, he went down for a walk on the beach, accompanied by Kirtanananda and Upendra. As Prabhupada walked on the beach, he pointed his cane towards some bubbles in the sand. Just see, he said, there are living entities everywhere. There is no place without living entities. And yet, they say there is no life on the moon. The beach was rocky and there were cliffs where the waves crashed powerfully like thunder. You hear this sound? Prabhupada asked. This is an echo of the gopis' heartbeats when they are feeling separation from Krishna. He walked for an hour until his two young servants were both tired. Do I tire you walking? He laughed. This walking and massaging are saving my life from day to day. Then he continued walking. By 11 o'clock, the sun finally appeared over the mountains and through the clouds. Srila Prabhupada, his head wrapped with a towel, sat in a folding chair on the beach, taking in the sunshine. He kept saying he needed more sun. After lunch, the sky was again overcast. In the evening, Prabhupada called Kirtanananda and Upendra into the large living room and led them in a subdued kirtana, singing Hare Krishna and Govinda Jaya Jaya. He stood and led them in a large circle around the room. He would stop before the picture of Krishna, bow slightly with folded palms, turn around, and then continue in the circle. On July 8th, after Prabhupada had been at Paradisio for 2 days, Shyamasundara and Mukunda drove up from San Francisco. The next day was to be Rath Yatra, and Shyamasundara and Mukunda, the first devotees to visit Prabhupada since his arrival in Stinson Beach, told Prabhupada all about the festival preparation. Of course, the whole festival had been Prabhupada's idea, but the devotees in San Francisco were trying to do exactly as he had asked. Srila Prabhupada had first gotten the idea for the festival while looking out the window of his room above Frederick Street. Noticing flatbed trucks passing below, he thought of putting Jagannatha deities on the back of such a truck and conducting an American style Rath Yatra festival. He had even sketched a truck with a four-pillared canopy on the back and decorated with flags, bells, and flower garlands. And he had called in Shamasundara, "Make me this cart for Rath Yatra." Now, ready and sitting outside the temple on Street was a cart, a yellow herds rental truck, compliments of the diggers and complete with 5-foot columns and a pyramidal middle cloth canopy. Sitting with Prabhupada on the beach, Mukunda told how all the devotees were working with greater enthusiasm and how the hippies in Ashbury were talking about the Jagannatha parade that would take place the next day. The devotees had tried to route the parade through Golden Gate Park, but the police department would only give permission for them to go south down Frederick Street to the sea. Mukunda said the devotees planned to have Jagannatha under the canopy facing the right side of the truck, Subhadra facing the rear, and Balarama facing the left side. He wanted to know if that was all right. Actually, Prabhupada said the deities should ride in separate carts, pulled with the ropes by the crowd through the street. Maybe that could happen in future years. Do it nicely, he cautioned them, and don't hurry it up. The devotees should drive the truck slowly through the streets down to the beach, and there would be constant kirtana. Mukunda and Shamasundara glorified Jayananda. He drove all around San Francisco, getting donations of fruits and flowers, found people to help decorate the cart, installed the sound system on the truck, and distributed posters in the stores. He was tireless, and his enthusiasm was inspiring everyone else to take part. The women had been cooking chapatis all day, so there should be thousands to give away to the crowd. The devotees had prepared hundreds of Hare Krishna Rath Yatra festival balloons to release on the streets as the parade began. When the devotees asked what else they should do, Prabhupada said that this was all a procession, prasadam distribution, kirtana. The people should get a chance to see Lord Jagannatha and chant Hare Krishna. There should be chanting and dancing in front of the cart throughout the procession. But do everything nicely, Prabhupada said. Do it as well as you can, and Lord Jagannatha will be satisfied. The next day, in the quiet afternoon, Prabhupada was sitting in the living room chanting on his beads. Upendra was with him, and Kirtanananda was in the kitchen cooking a feast. Suddenly, Prabhupada heard the familiar ringing of the cymbals, and he became very happy, his eyes widening. Looking outside, he saw the Rath Yatra truck with Lord Jagannatha, Subhadra, and Balarama, and dozens of devotees and hippies eager to see him. He went out to greet them and had them bring the deities inside and set them on top of the upright piano. Devotees and guests followed, filling the large living room. Smiling, Prabhupada embraced some of the men while others made obeisances at his feet. Some devotees helped Kirtanananda in the kitchen get ready to distribute the large feast he had prepared. Others reported on the success of Rath Yatra festival. It was great, it was wonderful, it was beautiful day, they said, and Prabhupada listened, moved by his disciples' description of the celebration. Many hippies had joined the large procession. Mukunda, Haridasa, Hayagriva, and some of the women had been on the cart, and the instruments, including Yamuna's playing on the harmonium, had all been amplified. Everyone in the streets had liked it. The police motor escorts had tried to hurry the devotees, but so many people had crowded in front that the parade had been obliged to go slowly, just as Swamiji had asked. Subala had danced wildly the whole time, and Jayananda had been jumping up and down, playing karatalas. From the truck, some of the women had handed out cut oranges, apples, and bananas, and others had thrown flowers. The crowd had loved it. Shamasundara told how they had been going up a steep hill. Shamasundara had been driving with his dog Ralph beside him on the front seat when the truck had stalled. He had tried to start the engine but couldn't. The brakes wouldn't hold. The
Then the
truck
brakes. Then the brakes.
then the brakes wouldn't hold. The truck began rolling backward downhill. Finally, he had managed to stop, but when he had tried to go forward, the engine had stalled and the truck had rolled backwards again. He would get it started, the truck would go forward, then stall, then roll backwards. Everyone had been in anxiety. At last, the truck had started forward and the procession had continued all the way to the beach. Srila Prabhupada smiled. It was a pastime of Lord Jagannatha's, he said. The same thing had happened when Lord Chaitanya had attended Rath Yatra in Jagannath Puri. Then also, the cart had gotten stuck and no one had been able to move it. The king of Orissa had brought forward the most powerful wrestlers to push the cart and pull on the ropes, but it wouldn't go. Even the elephants couldn't move it. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had then put his head against the cart and pushed, and only then did the cart begin to move. Now Rath Yatra had come to the west, and with it, this pastime of Lord Jagannatha. Prabhupada noticed some devotees were missing. Where are Yamuna and Janki? He asked. The devotees told him that some hippies had handed out candy spiked with LSD and that a few of the devotees had unwittingly accepted it and were just now recovering. Subala related how, after the festival, they had traveled out on the freeway in their flower bedded, canopy covered truck carrying 30 devotees and the deities of Jagannatha, Subhadra, and Balaram. They had driven up through the mountains in what must have been one of the most unusual vehicles ever seen. After all the visitors departed, the deities remained in the house with Prabhupada and his servants. Prabhupada felt satisfied that his disciples had successfully held a Rath Yatra festival. Although untrained, they were sincere. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and Bhaktivinoda Thakura would have been pleased to see the first American Rath Yatra. The whole world was in anxiety. Prabhupada explained to the devotees gathered in his room that evening. Only in the spiritual world was there freedom from anxiety. Becoming free from all anxiety and returning to the spiritual world was the purpose of Krishna consciousness. And festivals like Rath Yatra made people Krishna conscious. Prabhupada had many ideas for festivals. If he had the money and the manpower, he said, he would have a festival every day. There was no limit to Krishna consciousness. This Rath Yatra festival was another sign of the good reception for Krishna consciousness in the West. He wrote Brahmananda in New York. The house is situated in an exceptionally nice spot, and the house itself is aristocratic. So there is nothing to complain about the house and place. The only difficulty is that I cannot go to the temple on account of the zigzag course of the road and crossing the mountains. Anyway, the devotees are coming here, and the Rath Yatra festival was just performed with great pomp. More than 500 people followed the procession to the beach, and there were about 24 cars. They distributed thousands of chapatis, and at last, Sri Jagannatha, Subhadra, and Baladeva kindly came here in our house and will stay here for 1 week and then return.
Okay. Last week when I couldn't give the class, actually I was in Jagannath Puri, and what happened is that normally it doesn't take a long time to get darshan of Lord Jagannath in Puri. But this time it was unusually, I've never seen such crowds at. So I was stuck with my mobile, not with me. And that's how I couldn't attend last week's class. Because normally if you go in the, I couldn't take last week's class. Because normally if you go in the afternoon, you're able to come out fairly quickly. But this time, not only did I go in the afternoon, but also I'd never seen something like this. Huge crowds. And so it just became practically impossible to take a class last week. But one thing that I wanted to relate what happened last Sunday was that when I was in the queue, at one point there are many sections that you cross by now. So I was at one section and I went, there's one more section left. And then so the penultimate section, I was standing. You could be anywhere in the line, but I was somehow right in the front in the second section. And facing me was a police officer. A policeman, you could say. He was not a policeman actually, because he was supervising the arrangements. He was like a higher than a regular policeman. So he was looking at me, and he had a kind of a sarcastic smile on his face, and I was not sure if I had done something wrong, or the way he looked at me was a bit strange, and it was kind of discomforting. I was not sure if I did something wrong or had anything gone wrong. So he kept looking at me every now and then. He would get smiling at me. The smile was very, very unusual kind of a smile, So after a while, he came up to me, and hardly there was any distance between us, but still, he walked a little, 1 or 2 steps, and he came to me and asked, "Where are you looking?" In a kind of a firm voice, the smile still there in his face. So then I said, "Oh, I was just looking at you, and I was just looking around." He was quiet. He just heard my answer. Again, after a minute, he asked me, "Where are you looking?" Then I said, "I'm just looking at you, and I'm just looking around." Then he said, "Look there." So then I was trying to see. He was pointing towards the temple of Lord Jagannath. So I was not sure what to look there, because you had the dome. You could see the dome there. And then I just looked, and I just turned back to him. And again, after a minute, he said, "Where are you looking?" "Look there. I told you to look there." Okay. Okay. So then I knew that, okay, I need to keep looking at the dome of Lord Jagannath, which is. Then he began to explain. So I actually asked him, "Are you asking me to look at the dome of Lord Jagannath?" So then he said, "He is not Jagannath. He is Jagmohan." I said, well, the word Jagmohan means one who attracts the heart of the whole world, of living entities across the whole world. And he said, "He is Jagmohan." I said, I smiled at him, and he said, "I have been here doing, working morning sometimes, afternoon sometimes, the night sometimes." He kept saying how much work he had to do here, in that, as a police supervisor or whatever, because so much crowd was there. And he said, "I've been here for a long time," not just that day. He's talking about weeks or months earlier, I guess. So then he said, "But I love to do this because Jagmohan, he has captured my heart. He has captured my heart." 3 times he said it. "He has captured my heart." So then I said, wow. I was practicing Hare Krishna devotee, looking at him and around, and he was the one who said, "Look at this thing of Lord Jagannath." Then he was explaining how, Jagannath had captured his heart. In fact, that's why he used the expression Jagmohan. So at that point in time when he said that, I just remembered, because Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam, he writes that one can see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam if one hears the Bhagavatam with rapt attention. Then he says, no one can hear the Bhagavatam with rapt attention if one is not pure in mind. Then he says, if no one can be pure in mind if one is not pure in action. Then he says, No one can be pure in action if one is not pure in the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So he says, so this is the so our regulative principles are not actually some moral principles, they're principles of cognition. If you want to perceive, you want to see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. So it is a principle of cognition, not just a moral principle, Krishna will punish or not punish. Of course, it's also a moral principle, but more than a moral principle, it's a principle of cognition. So, but the interesting thing is, at the end of it, Prabhupada says, but if somehow or other one can hear with rapt attention, one can see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. So I used to always wonder, what does this mean? Because after saying all these things, then he says, but if somehow or other, if one can hear with rapt attention, one can see Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. And then I was thinking, when I saw this police officer, that's when I understood what Prabhupada is saying in that purport. Because here was a police officer who was just doing his duty, and he had to work a lot with a lot of crowds and all that. Yet he had so much attraction for Lord Jagannath. He literally was saying that Jagmohan, he has captured my heart, he has captured my heart, he has captured my heart. And he was so ecstatic. So and he chastised me also for looking here and there instead of looking at the dome of Lord Jagannath. So then I realized that this is what it means when Prabhupada said, somehow or the other, if one can develop attraction for Lord Jagannath. Of course, Prabhupada has given us a process, but the point is, ultimately, we have to develop that attraction for Lord Jagannath or Lord Krishna. So here was a policeman who apparently was not a practicing Hare Krishna devotee or not, but somehow or the other, as Prabhupada says, he had that attraction for Lord Jagannath. And I was thinking how fortunate he is that he has so much attraction for Lord Jagannath just by doing that seva of handling that crowd. Of course, I don't know if he realizes because of the seva, but anyway, because he was doing his seva nicely. So anyway, somehow or the other, Lord Jagannath had captured his heart. Okay, Mataji, let's go on for another 10 minutes. We have another 10 minutes.
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, maybe the rush was because I think that time only our president Draupadi Murmu had visited Odisha, like Jagannath Puri. The news had
No, this
come.
last Sunday she had visited earlier, I guess, not on that day.
Okay, maybe a day before or something. Prabhuji.
No, I mean, the entire period, probably it is because of the Puri Parikrama where all the devotees are there. But nevertheless, there's a lot of crowd, not just ISKCON devotees.
Okay.
Lots of crowd, actually. It would take minimum 3 hours to get darshan. But previously, it would take only about, half an hour maximum? But now it would take 3 hours to get darshan. That is the average time.
Shall I continue, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes. Srila Prabhupada still talked of going to India. He had virtually made up his mind to go. The question now was when, and whether by the western route via Japan or the eastern route via New York. The grey skies and unseasonably cool temperatures of Stinson Beach were a disappointment. His health was still poor. He even spoke of dying. It didn't matter whether he died in America or in Vrindavan, he said. If a Vaishnava dies in Vrindavan, the land where Krishna appeared, he is assured of joining Krishna in the spiritual world. Yet, when Lord Chaitanya had traveled outside Vrindavana, his devotees Advaita had assured him, wherever you are is Vrindavan. To be always absorbed in thinking of Krishna was also Vrindavan. So, if he were to pass away while preaching Krishna consciousness anywhere in the world, certainly he would still attain to the eternal Vrindavana in the spiritual sky. Nevertheless, Prabhupada wanted to go to Vrindavan. It was the best place to die or to recuperate. Besides, he had a plan for bringing his disciples to Vrindavan for training. He expressed this plan in a letter to Sumati Morarji, the owner of the Scindia Steamship Company. I am thinking of going back to India as soon as I get sufficient strength. I am now considerably old. I will be 72 years next September. But the work which I have begun in the Western world is not yet finished, and I require to train some of the American boys to preach this cult all over the Western world. So, if I return to India, I will have to take with me some of the boys for training. They are all nice boys to take up the training. So, your cooperation in this connection is greatly needed. You have already allowed my men from India free passage. Similarly, if you allow free passage for some of my American disciples, they can come to India and taking training from me at Vrindavan. The idea is that in this old age, I do not know when death will overcome me, and I wish to die in the last days of my life at Vrindavan. Prabhupada told Kirtanananda, Hayagriva, and others that he would take them with him and show them the sacred places of Krishna's pastimes. With the New York Temple's building fund, he would start his American house in Vrindavan. I may come to Montreal, perform the opening ceremony of installation of Radha Krishna Vigraha. Then I may go back to India for 6 months, as there is a program for construction of an American house for training preachers at Vrindavan. Vrindavan is the only solitary transcendental abode within this universe where Krishna consciousness automatically reveals. Therefore, I have a great hope to train some of my disciples for preaching work, even in my absence. I am now old man and attacked with serious disease. I may be overcome by death at any moment. Therefore, I wish to leave some trained preachers so that they can do the work of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. That is my ambition. I hope you all pray to Krishna so that I may be able to execute my duty properly. When Govinda Dasi wrote Prabhupada that she was anxious to serve him again as she had in New Jersey, he replied that he would be going to India to try to construct an American house where you will be invited to come and live for all the days. Both your husband and yourself, you will find a very peaceful atmosphere in Vrindavan to worship Krishna. Waiting for sufficient strength to travel, Prabhupada continued his daily routine at Stinson Beach. One or two at a time, devotees would visit him from San Francisco. His morning walks on the beach, his sitting to take in the sunshine whenever it peeked through the clouds, and his evenings of kirtana or reading in the living room remained undisturbed and peaceful. Upendra. He would sit in his chair on the beach side of the house. He liked to see us go in the water and play. At first, I felt a bit strange going in the water and knowing that Swamiji was watching me. But I went in and began washing my body. When I looked back at Swamiji, he was monitoring from his chair, throwing his arms up like
It
he
was
was
motioning, Madhu. It was motioning.
okay, sorry. So he was motioning from his chair, throwing his arms up like he was splashing in the water. He kept doing it until finally I understood that he wanted me to splash and play in the water. As I began to splash and jump around in the water, he nodded his head and smiled broadly. Mukunda. I went on a walk on the beach with Swamiji, and when he sat down, I sat down opposite him. Then he asked me, What's your definition of Krishna? I said, Krishna is God. He is the supreme being. Our duty is to worship and serve him. Swamiji seemed fairly satisfied. And then he said, You must chant 64 rounds per day on your beads. I was shocked at this and could not answer. I did not know if there was any need to answer. I just kept looking at Swamiji, and he looked at me. After some time, he said, Or at least you can chant 32 rounds a day. Still silence. I considered it to be very difficult to chant even 16 rounds. I was wondering how I could possibly chant 32 rounds. After some time, Swamiji said, At the very least, you must chant 16 rounds every day. I said, yes, Swamiji. I knew that I could at least try to handle that much. Prabhupada told Kirtanananda that he wanted to play the piano. The Jagannatha deities who had sat atop the piano for a week were now back in San Francisco at the temple. But when Kirtanananda and Upendra moved the piano away from the wall, they heard the thud of a falling object. What's that? Prabhupada asked. Kirtananda reached behind the piano and produced a framed canvas wrapped in a madras. He uncovered it and revealed a painting of Lord Nrsimhadev. Why is this being hidden behind the piano? Prabhupada asked. Janaki happened to be visiting at the time and she confessed. While she had been arranging the house for Prabhupada's arrival, someone had sent the painting out to the house. She had found it and hidden it. It was ghastly, she explained. Lord Nrsimha was tearing open Hiranyakashipu's abdomen, and there was blood everywhere. Patiently, Prabhupada explained that although materialistic people feel sorry for Hiranyakashipu, devotees become ecstatic when they see Nrsimhadev tearing him apart. Hiranyakashipu, he said, had terrorized the whole universe and had usurped the throne of Indra, the king of heaven. Hiranyakashipu had even tortured his own 5-year-old son, Prahlada, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna. So there was nothing wrong in Lord Nrsimhadeva's pastime. In fact, Hiranyakashipu, having been killed by the Lord, had been liberated. According to directing the devotees to hang the picture on the wall, Srila Prabhupada sat down and played the piano. The devotees had seen Prabhupada beautifully play the Indian harmonium, his left hand pumping the bellows, his right hand fingering the keyboard, but never a piano. They weren't aware he knew how, but he expertly played the melodies of Indian bhajanas. After about 5 minutes, he stopped. See,
Okay,
son?
I think we can stop here
Yes.
today. So any thoughts, reflections, comments?
Prabhuji, I saw again now seeing that piano, this one in before also like Prabhupada with that dictaphone, how he was working like as if he's expert in that one. Today also we saw that he's playing piano, that he was expert in playing piano also. Maybe he was playing it for the first time, maybe I'm guessing because
Yeah, it is similar to a harmonium, but it's still different.
yeah.
Any other thoughts, reflections?
Prabhuji, it's just a curiosity because nobody's asking the question. Now, the paintings were painted by Jadurani and others, and especially Jadurani was the first one who started painting different pictures. And where are they, Prabhu? They are in the different temples now?
I don't know where the original ones are, but their reproductions are available. I don't know where the original ones are actually.
Oh yeah, because some they have sent into San Francisco, maybe Montreal also, some maybe in even in New York, like a 22nd Second Avenue.
Anyone knows about those paintings? I guess no one knows. In Mayapur, on the in the Lotus building, each door there was a painting. So the original paintings are still there because they were painted on the doors directly. Of course, they've touched them up a little bit, but that's very minimal. But the original paintings are there. I don't know who did those paintings, but the paintings on each door of the Lotus building, at least on Prabhupada's floor. They're all still there. Okay, one other thing that I wanted to say was that when Brahmananda Prabhu left this world, he left in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And at that point, his brother Garga Muni had something very important to say. He said that his realization was, since Brahmananda Prabhu was instrumental in taking Srila Prabhupada out of the hospital, Beth Israel Hospital. So Prabhupada ensured that Brahmananda Prabhu had to never visit a hospital. Some of you may know the story, what happened. He had sleep apnea. So that was a condition that he always had. So he would have a machine for breathing, especially while taking rest. So subsequently developed some, I mean, this has been there for many years. It's like a routine thing. But he developed some lung-related complications in the summer of 2015. And so finally, Gopal Krishna Maharaj had arranged for a ICU ambulance to transport him to Delhi. So they brought the ambulance to his door, and before they could take him out from the room to the ambulance, he collapsed and he left his body. So he never entered a hospital. The Garga Muni Prabhu was saying that he never entered a hospital in his life, of course, except for, but he was never admitted in a hospital. Yeah, the other thing was that, just a few months ago, I finished reading, I'll Build You a Temple. So one thing is that Brahmananda Prabhu never had to visit a hospital. The other is that he left his body in Vrindavan. So when I heard Garga Muni Prabhu many years ago, I could find one connection, is that, okay, he did not have to enter the hospital. But as far as leaving his body in Vrindavan, I just thought, oh yeah, it's a wonderful Krishna's arrangement that he left in Vrindavan. But there is one connection which dawned upon me when I read, I'll Build You a Temple. So during Prabhupada's final days on this planet, he was at Mumbai, and they arranged a special train for them to take Prabhupada to Vrindavan, or at least a special coach was arranged in the train. And Prabhupada was so weak that I was wondering, I mean, the way they took him into the train, the description was very detailed, and I mean, with great difficulty, they actually took him into the train. So I was thinking, when I read that section, I was thinking, how do they actually manage to take him out of the train? Because Mathura station, usually the trains don't come on platform number 1. They may come on 2 or 3, and it's quite a deal to take someone out of the train from there even to a car also, even if a car had come. How did they manage to take Prabhupada out of the train? So I was thinking, how do they do it? And immediately after that, there was a description of what happened when they reached Vrindavan. So there it's explained that when the train reached Mathura, so Brahmananda Prabhu carried Prabhupada in his own arms from the train and took him to the car. So when I read that, then I immediately understood that if Prabhupada, I mean, if Brahmananda Prabhu had taken Prabhupada with his own arms, carried him with his own arms into Vrindavan for Srila Prabhupada to leave his body, then how is it possible that he himself would not be able to leave his body in Vrindavan? So that was like the remaining part of the thing. There was a more direct connection to his leaving his body in Vrindavan than just a generic mercy of the Lord, which no one could understand. But there seemed to be a direct connection. The fact that he personally carried Prabhupada from the train into the car and brought him to Vrindavan. Okay. Any other thoughts, reflections? Okay, Induleka, sorry, Leela Madhura Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Could you please elaborate when one should have a desire to go and settle in Vrindavan or Mayapur to leave their body. Because when we were reading Prabhupada Leelamrita, Prabhupada himself said that I'm an old person. Anytime death may overcome me. But he's a pure devotee. He knows what will happen to him. But being a practicing devotee, what should one do?
We should just pray to the Lord that we may be able to depart from his holy abode. That's all. We can just pray for that. That's it. But if Krishna so desires that we depart, but whatever it is, we should have the bottom line is we should depart while serving him, while preaching Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said a soldier likes to die on the battlefield. So either we leave our body while being in the preaching field or in the holy abode of Vrindavan or Mayapur or Jagannath Puri, one of the abodes of the Lord. So that's a legitimate desire to one or either of these two, but then Krishna decides what would be appropriate.
If someone is having a desire to do preaching as well as leaving his or her body in the dham, is
Okay.
it something wrong?
No, both you can have both simultaneously. No, but see, at the same time, we cannot, like, for example, when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj left his body, he was in America, Gita Nagari. So I don't know how many of you have read that this thing about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj leaving his body. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj actually had a choice. He could come to Vrindavan or Mayapur and leave his body, but Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj chose to remain in Gita Nagari. So he said that Prabhupada, I want the followers of Prabhupada to know that when Prabhupada said that all my temples are like Vrindavan or Vaikuntha, it is a fact. He said there are so many devotees who cannot afford, who don't have the money to come and leave their body in Vrindavan if they're diagnosed with a terminal disease. What would happen to them? So to give them encouragement and faith that all of Prabhupada's temples are as good as Vrindavan. So therefore he chose to leave his body. By choice, he left his body in Gita Nagari. That's a great, outstanding act of faith, outstanding act. It's an exemplary thing for the followers of Prabhupada, so they can have the faith that anywhere we leave our body, if it's Prabhupada's temple, that's as good as Vrindavan. Or of course, the preaching field that's naturally understood. Sometimes devotees go for preaching and they may lose their they lose their life, but that's glorious to die on the battlefield. So that's more obvious than the fact that if someone has a choice, someone like Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had a choice, who decided to stay back just so that devotees who cannot afford to do it can develop that faith that Prabhupada's temples are as good as Vrindavan. So okay, coming back to your question, that so there's nothing wrong in aspiring to leave our body in the holy dham. At the same time, there's nothing wrong in leaving our bodies while preaching or in any of Prabhupada's temples. So we may have a desire, as Prabhupada says, man proposes, God disposes. But any manner he disposes is actually the best. There's nothing wrong in having a desire.
So the solution is only prayers, because
Solution is,
we don't know.
The very concept of pure devotional service means whatever the Lord does, we are fully happy with that. If we think that is the best, right? That is the very concept of pure devotional service. It is selfless. Whatever the Lord wants. We have a desire, so what? Okay, if that is not what the Lord wants, fine. Whatever the Lord wants. That's what it means, pure devotional service.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Desiring is not wrong. Spiritual desires are fine. It's a wonderful desire to leave one's body in Vrindavan or Mayapur. That's fine. But or Jagannath, it's fine. But if the Lord desires something else, we should be equally ready for it. That's the attitude of pure devotional service.
You were talking about, can I ask one more question?
Yes, Vaji. We have time. We have time. Yeah, go ahead.
So I couldn't understand when you were talking about the Prabhupada's love, the way he was demonstrating how he was loving his disciples, and you were bringing the grand disciples and great grand disciples. I couldn't understand why did you bring the grand disciples and great grand disciples.
I did that so that Prabhupada's love is not experienced only by his disciples. Prabhupada's love is experienced by his grand disciples, and all his followers can experience his love. It's not limited by time or space. That's what I wanted to say. That it can be experienced by anyone. Of course, during Prabhupada's time, you just happen to be a temple, and Prabhupada may come to a temple. But here, the only difference is that you'll have to do a little bit more work than just. You are in a place, and Prabhupada is not just going to appear physically, manifest before you in that place. That's not going to happen. I mean, it can happen if he wants, but I'm just saying that's generally not going to happen. But we may have to do more work. That's it. Than the disciples of Prabhupada who had that opportunity spontaneously. They could just meet him, get an answer from him, all kinds of things. That kind of the facility is not as what do you call it? As easily available as it was during his time, because he was physically present. His books were there, everything. But now we still have his books. So to experience his physical presence, to experience his presence, so we need to take shelter of his books. And now we're reading the Lilamrita, so we're experiencing his presence. So like that. So it's not limited by time and space. That was my point.
Is there any incident where Prabhupada disciples or any other devotees in our movement had an experience of like Prabhupada comes in this in their dream or something, giving direct instructions to them after he left his body? Because I have heard from you that you have met many Prabhupada disciples, and that is what I understood the way you spoke.
I have met Prabhupada disciples, but your specific question was whether Prabhupada is an active presence in the lives of his...
After he left his body also, did anybody get any did anybody have any experience of having Prabhupada in their dream, getting direct instructions from him, something like
that? There are several devotees who had their experience, but in general, let me just tell you that it's not necessary that Prabhupada has to come in a dream or some specific manner of interaction like that. But Prabhupada, by becoming his follower, you can okay, let me put it like this. For me, I mean, I'll try to explain this. For me, Prabhupada is as tangible presence as you speaking here on, I mean, asking me a question now. What do I mean by that? In the sense that until I had Gopi Parandan Prabhu as my instructing spiritual master, you know. So until he left the planet, I did not understand what it means that Prabhupada is not on the planet. What does it mean actually? Because when you read his books, when you see his pastimes, even though I may not have interacted, but you get the experience of being with Prabhupada when you hear his pastimes and you read his books and things like that. So I did not understand what it means to say that Prabhupada is not physically on the planet. What does it mean? So when my instructing spiritual master Gopi Parandan Prabhu left the planet, that's the first time in my life in 2011. So from 1990 until I took to Krishna consciousness in 1990 until 2011, that's about 21 years later, I did not understand what it means Prabhupada is not physically present on the planet. When Gopi Parandan Prabhu left, then he understood. Because with Gopi Parandan Prabhu, I could call him anytime and I could get an answer to a question. I could write him and he would reply and things like that. So then I understood this is what Prabhupada disciples mean when they say that Prabhupada is no longer physically present on the planet. There are certain things which you cannot do, you know. And in fact, of course, by virtue of one's relationship with Prabhupada, one can still, there may be people who are very advanced who can communicate with Prabhupada and get a reply from him. But at least in terms of the presence in one's life, that it's freely, Prabhupada is freely accessible to everyone. So, and in regard to your question about does Prabhupada interact? Yes. In New Vrindavan, I don't know if you know the history of ISKCON. New Vrindavan went through a very wild phase with all kinds of things going on in that community. And at one point, there was a woman, a Karmi woman, a visitor actually, not a practicing devotee. She came to the temple, then she went to Prabhupada's Murti. And when she went to Prabhupada's Murti, she just heard Prabhupada tell her, "Take my shoes away." She's friend of Prabhupada. She heard Prabhupada tell her, "Take my shoes away." You know. So because she was in front of the Murti and she heard Prabhupada say this, she took the shoes away. And then later on, when everything was settled and all that, Prabhupada told her that, "Please take my shoes back." Then she came and kept the shoes back. Till then, the devotees are wondering, where did the shoes go? So here is a lady who was not a devotee, but who got a direct instruction from Prabhupada 2 times, in fact. First time is, "Take my shoes away," and second time is, I think that second time was in a dream though. First time was directly when she was going to Prabhupada's movie. Prabhupada spoke to her, and second time was when she had a dream that, "Okay, take my shoes back." Then she took the shoes back to the temple. So then the devotees understood, okay, what had happened to those shoes. So there are many such instances where Prabhupada has actually instructed devotees what is to be done. In the somewhere, I think it was 97, where one night I was one morning I was waking up, and then I saw a dream where I was offering Guru Puja flowers to Prabhupada, and it was a Murti actually. I could see that this is Prabhupada's Murti in a temple, and I'm offering flowers to Prabhupada. And then after I offered flowers, before I could wake up, Prabhupada's Murti had transformed into his physical form, and he was rubbing my back. So immediately I stood up, and Prabhupada said, "Go to the class." And so when I woke up, and my house is very far away from the temple, but Prabhupada had instructed, "Go to the class." So then immediately I forgot, I had to skip, I had to go to the university, but I just skipped classes because Prabhupada had given instruction, "Go to the class." So I went to the class, and surprisingly, Sridhar Maharaj was visiting, because usually when some visiting sannyasi is there, you get an advanced notice. But then this time it was sudden, and somehow Prabhupada said, "Go to the class." So I went to the class, and in the class, I received one of the most important instructions I've ever received in my life, which was Sridhar Maharaj spoke in the class that if you want to attract the attention of Srimati Radharani, because ultimately, of course, we have to follow the instructions of the spiritual master to follow the instructions of spiritual masters representative of Lord Nityananda to attract the mercy of Srimati Radharani. That we know the philosophy. But I heard something more specific than that. I thought this was the instruction that Prabhupada wanted to give me. That Sridhar Maharaj said, if you want to attract the attention of Srimati Radharani, you have to work on yourself first. So this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also said the same thing, that in order to be an effective preacher, one needs to become a proper practitioner. So yeah, I had one such instance where Prabhupada gave one instruction. There are other times where I've seen, a few times, a couple of times in my dream. And there is another story of one lady who was not a devotee, and she went to Prabhupada's room in Radha Rasa Vihari. So this was about 10 years ago. So she was like kind of a modern, although she was raised in a pious Hindu family, a Marwari family, but she was like a little bit challenging in a modern sense, you know. So she went to Prabhupada's room and they were all offering obeisances to Prabhupada. And she said, oh, this is just a murti, you know. And then they said, no, this is not murti. This is Prabhupada. And they gave her a whole philosophy. Her family members, they were not devotees also. But because they were pious, they didn't like it that she did not. Then she forced her to offer obeisances, you know. And so she was praying to, I mean, she was looking at Prabhupada. And then they said, these people are forcing me to offer obeisances to you. If you are real, like any one of us, can you give me a garland? You know, so that she told Prabhupada, like, if you're real, can you give me some garland to show that you're real? You know, so then they finished offering obeisances, and then they were just going out the door. And there was one lady, there is actually a group of people, you know, and about 6 or 7 people. And then the Mataji who takes care of Prabhupada's room, she came with the garland and she went straight to this lady and said, this garland is for you. And this Mataji, she had come to Mayapur last month, a few months ago. And so she was telling me, I was totally stunned when that happened, because I did it in a challenging mood. I mean, telling Prabhupada that if you're real, can you give me a garland? And this happened so quickly after that, you know, and then she was completely stunned when that happened. And then she understood Prabhupada is real. And so much so that she actually ended up getting married to a follower of Prabhupada, although she was at that point in time not a practicing devotee. But nevertheless, now she's chant 16 rounds. She's waiting to get initiated. So Prabhupada can reciprocate with anyone. I mean, here was a normal, non-Krishna conscious, just a regular visitor. So Prabhupada reciprocated with her. So, I mean, just like what do you say? Prabhupada would often make this point that Krishna, I mean, if Krishna can be kind towards Putana, how much kind can he be towards the devotees of the Lord himself? So we should always be conscious of this fact that Prabhupada, there are several instances where Prabhupada has interacted even after his disappearance with not even with devotees. So how much more he would reciprocate with his devotees. So we should be confident of this fact.
If time permits, can I ask one more question?
If others don't have a question, yeah, we have another 10 minutes to go. If others don't have any question or anything else to say, maybe some others can also share about their relationship with Prabhupada.
Prabhu, I have a question regarding your answer to the previous one, Prabhu. That's quite interesting. What you actually learned from Sridhar Maharaj, the lecture, what was the crux that you learned? That has been interesting.
No, he was saying that if you want to attract the attention of Srimati Radharani, first of all, you need to work on yourself. There's no substitute for that. You can't make up for it by preaching and doing other things or doing anything else for that matter. We need to be proper practitioners to be effective in our preaching also.
Proper practitioner meaning, Prabhu? How do you say?
Means like we should practice
sadhana perfectly, you think?
Okay, see, according to the Bhagavatam, whether you're akama, you're sarvakama, or you're mokshakama. Akama means you're free from material desires. You're full of sarvakama means you're full of material desires. Mokshakama means against a material desire for liberation. So whether you have any of these kind of desires, the only prescription according to the Bhagavatam is Tivra Bhakti, not Bhakti, Tivra Bhakti, intense practice of devotional service. So we need to practice devotional service intensely, which means that we need to follow the prescription that Prabhupada has given. We cannot take anything lightly. For example, we can afford to relax and we can do this and we can do that and we can do everything else also Krishna consciousness. No, we have to do only one thing in life called Krishna consciousness. Everything that we do in our life should be connected to Krishna consciousness one way or the other. Otherwise, we should not do it. So anyway, the point is that unless we practice Krishna consciousness in the manner that Prabhupada and the Acharyas have prescribed, then what is the point of living? That's the whole point. That's what I was trying to say. That if you really, I mean, because you how are you going to attain love of God without it? We need to practice that properly, and of course, preach that. That's there. That's a given. But first of all, we have to practice. If you don't practice and simply try to, like Prabhupada said, my disciples, they're distributing my books, but they're not reading them. So first of all, we should practice and then preach. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that the best devotee is one who is both a perfect practitioner and also a perfect preacher. So this is what the Prabhupada is recommended for us. So we cannot underestimate this working on ourselves. We have to do that for our whole life. We cannot just take it for granted. Oh, chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regulated principles, I'm going back to God. Yeah, but chanting offenselessly, I mean, really, I mean, to come to the stage of offenseless chanting, one has to really practice Krishna consciousness intensely. Otherwise, one will not come to the stage of offenseless chanting. So when Prabhupada says chant 16 rounds and follow the regulated principles and go back to Godhead, he repeatedly says, chant 16 rounds offenselessly. And to come to the stage of offenseless chanting is not easy. One has to practice Krishna consciousness intensely to come to that stage. That's what I meant. That was my understanding.
Thank
When
you.
I
I
attended
think
the
that's clear. Yeah, it's clear, bro. Thank you, bro.
Prabhuji, shall I ask one question here?
Yes, yeah.
Prabhuji, this is like little bit of personal in the sense, Prabhuji. Like, see, Prabhuji, I know that you are reading so many books. You said that always you're referring so many books you are reading and all.
I don't read
And-
anything other than Prabhupada's books generally, unless I have to refer something. Okay.
Okay, Prabhuji. That's what I want to know, Prabhuji, because we have to read daily Bhagavatam. We have to read here, we have to do other work, everything, Prabhuji. I wanted to just know how you get the time to read other books also, like regarding to Prabhupada. So many books you are referring. You were referring about some Prabhupada's somebody had written some book about Prabhupada's life story, all those things. Prabhuji. You are reading so many other books about Krishna consciousness or Prabhupada or
Oh,
whatever.
okay, understood. See, Mataji, I mean, I don't know whether I can say this as some guiding principle or anything, but for me, I have this, I don't know how to call it. Yeah, when it comes, I mean, I generally like to read Prabhupada's pastimes, and so much so that it kind of sometimes I end up attending some program late or whatever. All these kind of things happen when I start reading some books, which is not, I mean, ideal. You need to follow the. I end up going to Darshanati late or miss something. Or all these kind of things happen, but somehow, what is it? We need to understand how to practice bhakti by studying the life of a Bhagavata. So Prabhupada's life is very important for us because that is like I mean, how do you call it? The example. He's our hero, right? We need to know how to function. So it's important for us to see all the different, as much information is available about, I mean, as much pastimes are available. We should be eager to see how we acted. That'll broaden our perspective of how to apply the teachings that he has given us in his books.
Okay.
So to read about Prabhupada is important. It's
Yeah.
not like, see, my wife is actually a medical doctor, you know. So I've heard her tell in her classes that while studying medicine, generally they have a very hectic schedule, especially for exams, they have to study a lot, you know. So she often tells students whom she preaches to that suppose before an examination, the teacher says, you have to study this chapter also. They may have a prescribed thing. And if the teacher says that, okay, you have to study this chapter also, however overwhelming it is, however difficult it is, nobody even bats an eyelid. Oh, I mean, of course, they may be shocked, but they just do it because it just needs to be done. That's all, you know. So, which means that the nature of the mind is what is needed, it will end up doing some or the other. So if you have it in your mind that studying the life of Prabhupada is very, very important, then somehow or the other you will be able to fit in some time to do it. You know, apart from reading his books, it's also important to study his life. Very important, because it is the life of a pure devotee. You have both the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata. So both of them are important. So it is important for us to study how he lived, how he thought, I mean, how he manifested his love.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji, because I was not finding the time like to read any other books like the daily Bhagavatam reading or reading little bit of Bhagavad Gita and other work, everything I'm not able to read any other books. Sometimes I wanted to read some other books of Prabhupada only, again repeat it again, but still I was not finding the time or something like that. So, okay, now I have to work on it. Thank you.
I mean, I don't read multiple books of Prabhupada at the same time. I generally read, of course, Bhagavatam is there, but I mean, I don't read multiple books. Then it becomes a whole endeavor, right? I mean, you're trying to keep track of so many things. You keep it as the focus to read 41 pages. Of course, 41 pages of Bhagavatam generally, that to finish Bhagavatam in a year. But I mean, if you keep a target of this many number of pages that I'll read every day, then you could divide that among the books.
Okay. Okay, Prabhuji. Thank
So
you.
the time is the same, but how you allocate is entirely up to you.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you.
Shailesh, Prabhu, you have anything to say?
Only that I'm deep in nectar of returning to Prabhupada Mitra after three weeks of break. I'm so engrossed in it, Prabhuji. I'm lost for words today, which is a rare.
I'm also lost for words because I feel a whole new life by just participating in this Leelamrita reading session. It's overwhelming to read about Prabhupada, actually.
Yes, these are very nectarian sessions as well. So thank you. I would deeply urge and request and humbly request, although there's different rasas, but there's the rasa we get in these sessions with you doing Leela Mitra is different to when anybody else does it. So please try and do this and finish it with us rather than offloading it to anybody else, Prabhuji.
No. Actually, see, the full Leelamrita, no, I will. I mean, I'm a little bit, how do you say, I'm paranoid about commitments. Once I commit, then I ensure whatever happens, I do it. So, Leelamrita is something which I had committed. Leelamrita, the full of Leelamrita, including volume 7. But Prabhupada Nectar was supposed to be taken by Vidwan Gauranga Prabhu, according to the original schedule also. So, that's why I've not phased out what I'm supposed to be doing to someone else. That is supposed to be done by him anyway. Yeah. So I will definitely finish the Leelamrita myself.
I think that was the message Jagannath was trying to give you last week. Look and focus, look at him, and that's I help us look at him as well. So you're supposed to carry that message to us now. So that was the purpose of your messages last week. And thank you, Prabhuji, for a very, very wonderful class.
Vanchikalpatra